River, and they made it back to Spain, the survivors, and they made maps of the land. And on the map they wrote Appalachia, where they spent their first winter. But it wasn't down here where you see it on this map. By mistake, it got written way up where mountains are. And that's how the eastern United States mountains got their name, the Appalachian Mountains. A mistake on the maps. As these Europeans encountered us, they left something more deadly than the gun. It was that sickness that we had no medicine for. Our bodies were not used to European disease. And by the thousands, we'll never know how many tribes were here. By the thousands, Native people will be gone just within the first 10 to 20 years of contact. They'll spread the sicknesses from tribe to tribe, and it'll just go around. And so we'll never ever know the actual number of people that were here upon contact. The only thing we know is what was written down by the early explorers. The name Timucua, we're not exactly sure if it means friend or enemy. When the name was written down, Laudonnière, the Frenchman to the north, they had built a fort there, and the Spanish had to come and get rid of the French, and that's how St. Augustine got started. When the Spanish found out the French were illegally building a fort here, they sent Pedro Menendez here in 1565 to expel the French and to start his own colony. And so when the French were expelled out, they had recorded many things about the tribes. They lived with the tribe up there, the Timucua, and that is where the word comes from, Timucua. And so the Timucua people were also living right here, Chief Saloy's village. And when the Spanish had gotten rid of the French, they came back and they celebrated in September Thanksgiving with the natives, long before the pilgrims ever came. Right here. And I got my Thanksgiving cooking pot today. So if anybody wants to cook a meal with me later, we'll celebrate it again. We were wondering why they were wearing a cooking pot on their head. Well, it was very scary when we seen this armor. We'd never seen stuff like this. Metal. The only metal we had was the copper nuggets, which is a soft metal that was traded down from the Great Lakes regions and other areas. They had many metal things. And who knows, when Saloy saw the Spanish, he might have wanted them on his side. Or maybe he was just afraid that if he didn't invite them in, they would just take over. They had seen what the Spanish could do before with the explorers. When Pedro Menendez came, he stayed, and they never left. And if you know where the big cross is north of here, that is the spot where they landed in the first colony. The native way of life was completely different. Being a farming community, our whole lifestyle revolved around gardening. In the fall time was the time of the year that we would dry our food. What was left of the garden that we didn't eat in the summer had to be stored away for the winter. That's the food that we're going to be eating in the winter. There is nothing in the garden in the winter. And so we dried the food, and then we stored it in the gourds. Do you guys know what kind of corn this is? All corn is Indian corn. This is called strawberry corn. As it looks like, guess what it tastes like? Corn. We would take that corn and then we would store it in the gourd. Anybody ever get tree sap on their fingers? We would take that tree sap, mix it with ground charcoal, heat it together, and make a glue. And now we can seal this. The food could last up to 6 months, which is the time of year we need it to last until the new garden gives us fresh food again. The new garden will be in the summer, spring, and that is the time of year when the hunters returned home, helped plant the garden, and by summertime we were celebrating our New Year's. Our year did not go by January, it went by the harvest of our crops, our corn. And so we called it the Green Corn Dance, and it was a time of renewal when we would get together with the whole village. The old fires would be put out, and the new fires would be lit. Gourds are nature's containers, and all over the world, people had them. This is what natives used to carry water, carry spices, keep food in, and it would keep the food fresh. And yes, it will break easy. You grow these in the garden. They're not food though. And so that's how we would store our foods. One of our houses in our village would be completely enclosed like a smokehouse, and they would build smoky fires. A lot of times it was up on stilts with an open floor that allowed the smoke to fill the house up. And this was up on stilts to keep the bears out of it, but the smoky fire kept the bugs out of it, and that term smokehouse is still used today. Just like the word barbacoa is now barbecue. Imagine eating your dinner today using a turtle shell, or a seashell, or a drinking cup. And long ago, everything we had came from nature. We took the rocks out of the ground, and we learned to break the rocks. We chipped the rocks using antlers of the deer as pressure flakers, and sometimes little hammers, and sometimes we had big hammers. Check this one out. That would be used to bust out larger stones. Now there's not a lot of good rock found here, so they went inland and they got the rocks. They went north and they got the rocks. This piece came out of Georgia along the Flint River, but it was found by a little girl in her backyard in DeLand, Florida, on the St. Johns River. So that meant somebody went up there and did some trading or collecting and brought it back and either made it or had it made there and traded for it, and it got used down here. And I don't know how they lost it. I'm not that old. But the little girl finding it in her yard, that's evidence that where she lived, natives were. And if you live in Florida, there's not a spot you can go to that we haven't been. We're not just here 500 years. That only goes back to the cooking pot. Our history goes back thousands of years. And our evidence is laying everywhere. And if it's not there, our footprint was there. And so as I say that with confidence, there's not a place you can go in Florida that natives haven't already been. We would take those rocks and we would use those rocks to make all kinds of tools. This blade is made of flint from far away. These rocks are made of coral from the west side of Florida. And the handles are bone. The middle one, a deer leg bone, and the two on the ends, alligator jawbone. What ties them together? Animal tendon and the tree sap glue. We also use those to make axes. Everybody say tomahawk.
Tomahawk.
These tomahawks are used basically for building things, but not by themselves. If I chop a hard piece of wood, they would break. This one's made of shell, which is actually more common in Florida than rock. Even the knife. Those knives you saw, that's not the common knife. The common knife is laying all at your feet right now. Shells. There's a whole pile of them over there. Anybody need a knife today? Well, there's some right there. And they were laying everywhere in Florida. And don't you know they used them? Of course. Now, if I chop hard wood, they will break, so I have to burn the wood first. Burning the wood makes the wood softer, easier for the chopping. And so back and forth, burning and chopping to hollow out a boat or a canoe. This is called a dugout canoe because the inside has been dug out. You can see one over there, I think that looks like they've been working on one here. Somewhere around here I saw one. Anyways, get a large tree, burning and scraping, burning and scraping. Let the fire burn it soft, then chop it. Whenever you hit the hardwood, stop chopping, scrape it there, scrape the coals back on it, burn it again. To keep the walls from burning, mud and clay would be plastered. When we bring down a big tree, we build a little fire by the roots on whatever side we want it to fall to. Use a blowpipe, just like a torch, we can blow our air and burn out a cave right in the bottom of the tree. And so that's how trees were brought down. We didn't use the axe. This is for simply removing the burned wood that the fire did. If I want to make a log into 2 logs, no chopping, burn it in half. And so that was the native way of building and using things. We had many ways to drill. One way to drill would be to take your hands, use your hands. Another way to drill would be a bow drill. A bow drill, this case, is not for shooting an arrow. This bow is a rib bone of a buffalo, and the string is loose to wrap down, which I'd push down with a shell and work the bow back and forth to make it spin. 2,000 years ago, this one goes back to. All over the world, people had it. Everybody say pump drill. A pump drill could be used to drill shells to make beautiful wampum. Everybody say that, wampum. Wampum. The quahog shell here gives a purple color, which is extremely valuable in the wampum bead. So if you had a lot of purple, that would be more valuable than just this one. But that's how we would drill it. We'd break the shell, drill the holes, put them on a string, work the string back and forth over a sandstone that had a groove in it to get them all the same, and then we would put it on a belt. A lot of work to make a bead. Basically one person's day to get one bead. Of course, you wouldn't do it that way. You would drill your holes all one day, do your grinding all the one day. So it'd be a lot of work. And so that was what made it so valuable. The drill bit here is made of flint. And if I don't like it, I can take it out and put a different one in there. This goes back to the ancient times. This is known as socketing. And I'm going to show it to you in the weapons in just a moment. And so drilling the shells to make beautiful carvings that we could carry far away, and they could be extremely valuable, and that might be our money that we have right here in our grounds, shells. And so as I started my program telling you that Native Americans did lots of trading with each other all over the place, they did. That's how shells ended up in Oklahoma and sites today. And shells ended up way up in the north in sites. And that's how things from up there come down here, just like that arrowhead that I showed you through trade. So we talked a little bit about farming. We talked a little bit about gathering. Let's talk about some fishing. Anybody like to go fishing? Native Americans definitely did that. We carved deer bones into fish hooks. We took corn cobs and made floats. And we used shells as sinkers. And what do you think that string would be? Well, it could be a lot of things. Everybody say yucca. Yucca. There's some yucca growing right there by that fence. Long ago when they built the wall around this city here, they planted yucca so thick that you had to climb through it.